Hello, everyone. My name is Talal, and welcome to Popcorn and Soda, the show where we discuss all things movies, pop culture, and so much more. Godzilla minus one, the latest entry in the Godzilla movie franchise, which is at this point quite possibly one of the biggest franchises in the world, where there's films coming out in Asia. There's, of course, the Monarch TV show, which is killing it, the Godzilla franchise, the Godzilla Kong. Godzilla is really the king of monsters at this point. Truly is. But did Godzilla minus one live up to the movies that we're used to recently? Did it surpass it? What did I think of Godzilla minus one? Hands down, quite possibly one of the best movies of the year, if not my favorite movie of the year. Godzilla minus one is an absolute masterpiece. I said it. Masterpiece. This movie is so damn good that I urge everyone to go watch this. If you're a fan of kaiju movies, if you're a fan of Godzilla, or even if you're a fan of foreign cinema, or in general, if you just like movies, because although it's called Godzilla minus one, and of course it's about Godzilla, this is one of the most human stories that you'll watch all year. Where the human story eclipses the story of Godzilla, where Godzilla is almost like an auxiliary background canvas, where we have these amazing characters that, director, writer, Takashi Yamazaki, who came up with this idea and directed this amazing film from the original Toho Japanese production team, the company that created Godzilla. Godzilla minus one is better than any Godzilla movie that's ever been made. To me, again, I'll take that back because I've never seen all the Godzilla movies. I've seen predominantly all like the mainstream ones. I haven't seen some of the ones in the middle, but to me, I can truly say out of all the Godzilla movies I've seen, minus one is my favorite by a long shot. What makes this movie so good? Where to begin? There are so many layers to this movie. And it's set in the World War II era, and the atomic bomb, and just in general, the despair in Japan at that time, the struggle people were going through. It follows the story of a character named Shikishima, who is a kamikaze pilot. And for those who don't know what kamikaze pilots were at the time, their whole point was just to like ram into you and blow up, right? So it follows that character, and it starts off with him flying his plane into a abandoned airstrip on a random island, and there's a group of mechanics there. They're helping out, of course, the Japanese troops, and they're like, "Hey, we can't seem to find anything wrong with your plane." Turns out, our main character Shikishima, he's of course just he's struggling with his morality and the fact that he's a kamikaze flight plane, right? Like he's a fighter, like his whole job is to pretty much die, right? Protecting his country. And he's a 3D character in this movie, someone who's dealing with mental health and who's dealing with fear, because he's still a young guy in this movie. So the movie starts off at that, and big disclaimer right off the bat, I'm not going to say the names of the actors or attempt to pronounce it out of respect for them because I don't want to butcher anyone's name, and I have way too much respect for the entire cast and director and crew of this film. So if at any point I refer to them, I will refer to them as their role in the movie because they deserve all the respect that they get. And I do apologize in advance of any names that I do mispronounce. But yeah, the movie follows Shikishima and his journey, and within the first 5 minutes, Godzilla is like in the movie. But it's like it's this movie's almost like an origin of Godzilla, where he exists, but he's not the full-fledged Godzilla that we know. So the movie starts off with Godzilla invades that island that he lands on. Something happens on the island, no spoilers, and Shikishima gets away, and he returns back home to find that his parents sadly perished in the aftermath of the war. His neighbor, she lost her family. She accuses him of being a traitor when she finds out that, hey, why are you here? You're a kamikaze fighter. People like you fought. Maybe we would still like have our chance. Maybe our family would be alive. And the first half an hour of the movie kind of follows that. His trajectory of coming back and suffering from PTSD. And that is where he runs into a female with a child who's running away from, it looks like, the authorities and some of the local street people, pretty much stealing food for the child. Passes the baby off to Shikishima, and then that's where the story kind of begins, where they kind of meet up again and they're kind of in this bond and they're stuck together pretty much with each other. So the movie pretty much follows Shikishima's life after he lands back on his feet as he's trying to put together the pieces of the war. And of course, Japan is in ruins at this time. And it shows that the economy is crashing. There's no food, there's no work. And this movie's kind of told over a span of a few years. And the best part about this movie by far is the cast of this movie. It's what happens is Shikishima ends up getting a job on this sailboat with 3 other characters who are responsible for pretty much blowing up all the mines that the United States Army and troops left behind in the oceans. And this sailboat and this cast of characters, there's 4 of them all together. There's a scientist, there's an old timer who's a submariner, and then there's this youngster who everyone loves to hate, right? They're all pulling his leg, but they all have a soft spot for him. And there's Shikishima, of course, who is living with this burden of not telling people what really happened to him and his life. And boom, as they are doing this dangerous job trying to make meats end, pops up everyone's favorite kaiju, Godzilla. And he's not just that Godzilla we saw at the start of the film. It was like this tinier lizard kind of creature. This is full-blown Godzilla. This is years after he's continued to grow and he's continued to like manifest into this force of nature that Godzilla is. And bam, right from there, the madness begins, where Godzilla is chasing their sailboat, and then boom, the Navy comes in to try to beat Godzilla. And this is quite possibly the best kaiju movie I've seen, because it doesn't rely on Godzilla as the main storyline almost. As I mentioned, it's Godzilla's the canvas of this movie. And the characters are you kind of paint with. And there's the story who you follow, right? And their storylines are all intertwined. So what happens is, of course, the 4 guys, the scientist comes up with a plan to kill Godzilla and get some of the local people involved in this plan, because they can't trust the government. The government's let them down. And that's a big part of the movie as well, talking about how the government let the innocent people die. The innocent people didn't have anything. So it's all about the Navy, the fighter planes, the army vets. They're the ones that come together to destroy Godzilla as Godzilla invades Tokyo. So by far, the cast of this movie and the story of this movie, as I mentioned, is just amazing, because it's grounded in reality. Although I get it, it's Godzilla, it's a kaiju, it's, you have to have a level of like disbelief, but it's a very human story where everyone's just trying to survive. And the acting is just so good in this movie. Shikishima, amazing, amazing actor. He legit has so many freak out scenes where he's suffering from PTSD, or just in scenes around Godzilla where he's freaking out, and you're like, if I came head to head with Godzilla, that's probably what would happen to me. You would freeze, you would panic, you get scared. And again, there's so many other casts in this movie of characters that come back and help Shikishima with the Godzilla problem, the entire crew. There's a mechanic who I won't name or I won't disclose too much about. You'll know when you watch the movie. Great character. Love the casting. Love the story. Let's get to Godzilla. Godzilla is a bad mofo in this movie. He is big. He is scary looking. He's got his little thorns in the back, the spikes. And by far the greatest atomic breath in any Godzilla movie I've ever seen, because it's literally, it replicates a nuclear bomb. When Godzilla does that original very first atomic breath in Tokyo, it is something to be seen. Watching it in IMAX, it just blew my mind because it's literally a bomb that Godzilla drops, and the ripple effect of it, the sound of it, the destruction of it, it's wild. It's quite possibly one of the best cinematography for any scene that I've seen this year. The aftermath of what Godzilla's like staring into the sky, watching the almost watching what he had just done. Like the oh man, words won't do this justice, so I'm gonna stop right there. But I'll just say that atomic bomb scene, amazing. And the character design of Godzilla, I love. Like they really, it's full out CG. It's no longer the Toho style guy in the costume. They went out. The CG in this movie is amazing. There are maybe a couple scenes that are a little spotty with Godzilla where you're like, but the majority of it, it's like, wow, this is Hollywood level CGI, if not better. And they killed it at that. It was a great, great, great design of Godzilla. It's hard for me to say things that I didn't enjoy about the movie. Like, it truly is, because I love this movie so much. I think it's such a treat. I think it's such a breath of fresh air. And this isn't even a negative. I think for a lot of people that aren't accustomed to watching either Japanese film, foreign films, you need to have a sense of disbelief at certain points. So at some points, like the way North American film viewers are conditioned, there are things you might find campy, as like Godzilla's like walking through a farm like in broad daylight, and it's kind of like, what? I get that maybe campy to some people, but forget that. Don't get into the disbelief of it. Walk in with an open mind, and it's part of the movie. And then just the last thing I gotta add, the thing that I love about this movie is the score and the sound effects of this film. That right there is just like the original like Godzilla theme. You know, you've all heard it. Dun, 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 dun. It's like campy. It's amazing. It's terrifying. It's sinister. I love the score in this movie, and the sound design and the sound creation of this movie is top notch. There's so many amazing scenes where you're just watching Godzilla either stomp through Tokyo or Shikishima in his plane, or just overall, like, it was just top notch technical mastery. Like, I gotta give this movie its flowers. Like, there's very little things that I even recall I didn't like in the movie. And there was pretty much, like, as I mentioned, I liked this movie so much that hands down, the second I left, I was like, wow, this is a good movie first. Number two, it's a good Godzilla movie. Anyone can watch this movie and have a good time with it because of how universal this movie is. And of course, the despairs of war, the despairs of people dying, suffering, and how, at the end of the day, how needless all these things are, right? Like, we should all learn to live with each other, embrace each other's cultures, embrace each other's like religions. But sadly, of course, these things did happen in the world. So overall, what's my final conclusion on Godzilla? You guys know me. I don't give out scores. I don't give out star ratings. To me, art is in the eye of the beholder. Something that I like, you may not, and something that you like, I may not. That's perfectly okay. That's the best thing about movies. I break it down in a simple way. Is this a movie theater movie where you should go watch it in a theater? Is this a movie you should watch at home on a streaming platform? Or is this like a rainy day movie where you're just kind of flipping through the channels, you land on it, and you kind of just watch it? Hands down, this is the prime example of a movie theater movie. The sound design, the effects, the story, Godzilla. This is a movie that needs to be experienced in an IMAX theater. I usually say any movie theater, but an IMAX will just enhance your movie going experience so much. And big shout out to the entire team because Toho's has this, like it's the 70th anniversary of Godzilla, right? Toho created Godzilla and they've had a hit or miss record with the movie, but at the end of the day, Godzilla is like a cultural landmark in Japan, right? Not even a landmark, like an actual character in terms of their culture and in terms of their popular culture. This movie is so good because it didn't fall in the tropes of what the North American Godzilla has been over the last 10 years. It's original, it's true to the original source material of Godzilla, and it's very unique in a very unique setting. So I recommend everyone watching this movie in a movie theater. So I encourage each and every one of you to go out, watch this movie while you still can, while it's still in the theaters, because the more you guys go and watch it in theaters, the more it will expand and the more likely there's a chance for there to be a sequel. I would love to see a sequel to this movie because it does leave it on an open-ended kind of story where it's like, what's happening here and what's happening here? So there's definitely room for a sequel for Godzilla Minus One. And I want everyone who was a part of this story to come back, the creation of this film, and continue this story, or whether it's a new story. Just I would love for Toho to give a sequel to Godzilla Minus One. So encourage you to go watch it and come on back. Leave your comment below. I would love to know what you guys thought of this film. And once again, I want to give everyone who was part of this movie their virtual flowers because I'm a big believer in doing that. Hands down, the best Godzilla movie I've ever seen. And hands down, if this year doesn't end the way I think it may be ending, this may potentially be my favorite movie of the year as well. So there you have it, guys. That is my review of Godzilla Minus One. As always, I want to thank each and every one of you for making me a small part of your day. Till next time, hope you have a wonderful day.